Welcome back to the Fried Egg Golf Podcast. I am your host, Andy Johnson. Today, I'm excited to, I would say, kind of kick off our Masters coverage. This was a fun interview. I interviewed Dre Cooper, who's the director of the new Amazon Prime documentary, which debuts on March 30th. Rory McIlroy, The Masters Wait. It's like a very inside look at Rory's career, and particularly the final round of at Augusta National. I was able to watch it, enjoyed it a lot. I think people that are really into golf will enjoy it, and there's some really cool moments and interviews that you probably haven't heard before about the whole thing. It's one of those rounds where I feel like the more and more you watch it, you still are just as excited to see footage and shots from it. It was such an unbelievable round. So big thanks to Dre for coming on and talking about his film that he created, and a lot about Rory, 2025 Masters champion. So also at the back end, producer PJ Clark and I are going to chop it up with our 10 favorites for this year's Masters. It's kind of a crazy Masters going into this, where, Scotty and Rory haven't been, I would say, their best. They haven't, Rory was really dominant going into last year's Masters. Scotty has, after the win at PGA West, has been very mediocre by Scotty's standards. I want to be clear. I don't want to get in Scotty's crosshairs, but by the standards he's set the last couple of years, he's been pretty mediocre. And then every other really great player around them, has played really well, to the point where Xander Schauffele has looked as good as he's looked in the last 18 months. But you're looking at all the other guys. It's like, how do you even get Xander Schauffele into the top 10? So that's a fun exercise after the Dre Cooper interview that will round out this episode. Before we get to Dre, this podcast is supported by Cobalt Rangefinders. This rangefinder's amazing. Honestly, I was playing a member guest down in Florida. We had a group of caddies. They're full-time caddies, and it's funny. My caddy was using his rangefinder for the first 2 days, the 2 days of this member guest, and then on the final hole, we were trying to figure out where my ball went, and I was like, my rangefinder has zoom, and they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, I can go 6 to 12x zoom. And they're like, both caddies of the group immediately are like, let me see this thing. They looked at it and they're like, this is the best rangefinder I've ever seen. It's an incredible rangefinder. They've got great buttons that make it really easy to switch from meters to yards, change the visibility settings on the graphics on the rangefinder, depending on how you want to see them, in different lights. They have the zoom. This is a really, really well thought out product. It's a high performance, awesome rangefinder. I think about the first rangefinder I ever had when I was in high school, which is now approaching 25 years ago when I got my first rangefinder, and to think about where it's come. This Cobalt rangefinder to me really pushes rangefinders forward. So if you're interested in checking out Cobalt, their website is cobalt-golf.com. And if you use the promo code FriedEggPod15, no spaces, that's FriedEggPod15 with no spaces, you get 15% off, and that's good through April 30th. So check out Cobalt Golf, check out their rangefinder. I have the QZ6 rangefinder. It is awesome. Check it out. And now let's get to Dre Cooper. Everybody's got a different bar to clear. I feel like when I make a YouTube video about golf, if it captures my wife's attention, I feel particularly good. Unfortunately, a lot of our stuff's a little too nitty gritty for my wife, and it often doesn't clear that bar. But I'm particularly smitten when it does. Do you have a bar? Is there something that you feel like when you clear it, you're like, oh, that was good?
Yeah. For me, it's always the mom test. I'm like, if mom can understand this and track this, and if she's in, then we've done our job. So that's usually who I'm referencing. My wife, like, she's my toughest critic. She'll tell me all the things that are wrong with it, but she'll understand it all, regardless of the complexity or how dense it is or what have you. Whereas my mom's just like, honey, what's going on here again? So we gotta figure out how to, hit that sweet spot. So yeah, mom's usually the litmus test.
We did a live pod years ago, and I had been podcasting at this point as my job for 4+ years, and my wife had never listened to an episode, and she came to the live show, and we came off the stage, and she's like, that was really good, and I was like, well, thank you, thank you for the first time in 4 years, knowing what I actually do for my job. It was a humorous moment. Dre, you've worked on so many projects in your career, and I'm sure you get pitched a lot of projects. When this project came across your desk, when it kind of came into your purview, what about it immediately appealed to you?
I mean, Rory, as far as elite athletes go, and guys that have been at their craft for a long time, who've had incredible highs and incredible lows. I mean, Rory is that guy. And immediately I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I'm all in. Not to mention, as most 40-year-olds do, the door either opens to golf or back to golf. And so I was a kid. I grew up playing baseball. That was my thing. I played it every year round, since I was like 5 years old. Mom was a single mom, and she was like, you're going to do this. And I loved it, fell in love with the game. And along the way, I'd pick up golf clubs. But then I put them down for some time. And so over the last couple of years, I've picked it back up. And, of course, following Rory's story over these years, and knowing how close he's come and how far he's been. And then obviously this year at the Masters was incredible. And I think Sunday goes down. I keep saying arguably the most exciting and dramatic round of golf, but I think you tell me, you've seen a lot. I'm going to just go out on a limb and say the most dramatic and exciting round of golf in history.
I've rewatched that final round like 3 or 4 times now, and watching your film, I'm just as drawn into the story as I was like watching it live in person. In a way, I think it's got just such lasting power. There are certain moments in time in sports. It's one of the great things that like just make lasting impressions on you. And anytime you go back and watch it, as a kid growing up in Chicago, the Last Dance documentary like brought back floods of like memories as a kid that were incredible. But this one being so fresh, it's still like you're still riveted by it, even though there's been so much talked about over the last year. As you dug into Rory's story, what were a couple of things that really stood out to you as someone who is kind of like a casual golf onlooker to diving really in?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, there's the reality that Rory has had this opportunity to achieve the rarest feat in golf with the career Grand Slam, since going into the Masters in 2015, right? So, essentially 11 years, with that sitting there, as the elephant in the room, so to speak. And so, but, then he finally gets it at this year's Masters, but it wasn't like a runaway round or wasn't like a runaway tournament. It was so razor thin. Up until literally the last stroke. And so it became immediately clear that, just given what Sunday represented, given my own experience of having watched it live, that we wanted to make a film about a round of golf. And so I think from a filmmaking standpoint, it's like, well, if you're a golf fan, you can watch a lot of golf. But if you don't sit there and watch a lot of golf, if you're not a big golf fan, it's how are you going to do this, right? How are you going to make a film about a round of golf? And I think knowing how exciting and dramatic it was inherently, we had that going for us, but it was inevitable. I knew we had to build the film around that as the through line, but then it was about how to build this parallel narrative of going back in time and understanding, what led to that moment on the 18th green when Rory finally sinks that putt and he drops to his knees and he has, one of the most dramatic and cathartic responses to that moment. And if you saw that yourself, whether in real time or saw it, shortly thereafter, it was filled with so much emotion and power and a very, very touching but very intense moment. And I think, we always talked about at the beginning of the project, if you could take that moment, bottle it up, and then unpack it over the course of 90 minutes to understand how he arrived at that moment, then we'd have ourselves a compelling film. So I think right from the beginning, it was about, understanding, what the challenge was of how to create this kind of parallel narrative of the Sunday round, but also understanding, Rory's sort of story and journey to get there and not fall into the sort of typical, path of telling the cradle till now biopic, right? We made a conscious decision to not do that and try to ground it in that Masters round. So, that was kind of where we started.
The one thing you hit on, it is an enormous story. Basically 2011 till last year's Masters, and just that kind of journey that Rory went on. That is a huge task of trying to figure out how to put this all together into an hour and a half. What were for you the most helpful pieces of putting it together, or like the real big unlocks that you guys came across in the storytelling exploration?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Rory's relationship to Augusta, and I think there's something really, really fascinating about, Augusta is arguably the most storied course in all of golf, this rich history. But Rory himself has this incredibly, intimate and complicated relationship with this place. But it started out as a Shangri-La to Rory, right? As a young boy, he loved the nights of, watching the Masters with his dad. They'd catch it late on the BBC, over the weekend. And so he grew up in awe of this place and of the players. To then have this place go from Shangri-La to haunted house over time, and then to figure out how he was going to sort of wrestle with this place. And so I think one of the biggest unlocks was looking at his experience in 2011, arguably, one of the biggest chokes in Masters history. Maybe a case could be made for some others, Norman, who Rory references as well. But I think Rory himself, when you see a guy with, a 4-shot lead going into Sunday, to just watch him literally just, spiral by the end of it was really, really intense. I had known of it. I didn't recall, how bad it went for him until we dug into the material, and you just watch him, you watch the body language, and you see the way he was responding. And so that 2011 experience, I think, became a pretty big creative unlock, because you really need to understand that at just 21 years old, he's got a chance to, again, make history, be one of the youngest guys since Tiger to win there. And he was doing it in just rare fashion, dominant fashion, with that 4-shot lead. And then to watch it all crumble, you go, how do you come back from that? And you hear the pundits, Rory may never survive this. And then what's he do? 6 weeks later, he just dusts off the shoulders and he breaks, half a dozen records at the US Open to get his first major. And so you go, that's the guy everybody was talking about. And so that became a big unlock for us.
How, obviously that a big piece of this, and you illuminated on it earlier, is the mental hurdles, which are, how do you go about showcasing the mental side of something and what somebody might be going through between the ears in a visual story?
Yeah. I mean, Andy, you asked me earlier, when the project first came my way, what excited me? Rory excited me for sure. But then the creative challenge of visually telling a story about golf, which is, again, it's one of the most, if not, I think it's the most mental sport there is. As someone who played baseball, I would say baseball is like a cousin of golf, in terms of kind of the mental fortitude required. But there's other sports where like it's so much easier to get lost in the rhythm. Yes, you need to be an elite athlete. You need to have great skill to have success at the highest level. But basketball is a dance. And when you're in the rhythm, you're in the rhythm. But golf, I mean, my God, you're standing there over this putt and it's right here and there's the cup. And it's like a million things can get in the way. And you think, and you're sitting back at home on the couch, you're like, oh, how hard is that? Even I could do that. And then when you watch a miss, you go, oh my God. And you just know it's so hard to get it done at that level. The margins are so thin. And so the mental side is critical, right? And so visually, in talking to Rory, he talked a lot about his strategy for Sunday. He said he felt good going into Sunday, but he was uncomfortable about his pairing with Bryson. And so, he talked to Dr. Bob and some others, and he was like, all right, I'm going to figure out how to kind of get into my own bubble. And I'm going to try to sort of drown out the noise. And you hear this all the time at this level, like, oh, shut out the noise, focus on me. But when you're doing it in golf, it's even harder. Because there's just a million things that can go through your head when you're over that ball. It's so hard in that way. And so we started with that. And then as we got deeper with Rory and as he talked about his process, swing thoughts are such a big deal. And so the idea was, well, how do we visualize this? And so that's where I came up with the idea of, essentially, let's film with Rory at Augusta without the crowd, without the gallery, in his own little world, just him and this place. And so we did all these kind of specific visual shots of him at key holes, at key points, so that we could, in the telling of the story, not simply see the broadcast just recut, but how to actually go deeper into, his experience of it and make the experience of the film, sort of immersive and kind of experiential. And so we came up with that sort of visual motif.
Yeah, that plays out throughout it. It's a neat little piece of it of how it kind of ties together. I think you're right on about baseball. I've always said pitchers are the closest corollary because it's the only non-reactionary kind of like hitting, see the ball, hit the ball, right? And you can go into slumps a little bit, but it's see the ball, hit the ball. Pitching, you have to think, and you get the guys that can't throw to first base because they get the yips, you got guys that just bomb out because they can't throw strikes anymore. It's very similar with golf. It's super hard. I saw that you also directed a documentary about Clarissa Shields, the gold medalist boxer. And then I assume in your career throughout it, you've been across a lot of high performers. Have you noticed anything about personalities of high performers? And how so did Rory kind of stand out amongst the group of people that you've been around?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm sure they all share some personality traits. I mean, call it, some sort of version of, type A, alpha, that sort of thing. But I think more than anything, what they share is this. And it's interesting. There's a moment of it in the film, an old Charlie Rose interview that he did with Rory, where he asked him, is there a common denominator with elite athletes? What separates you guys from the rest? Is it a will to win? And Rory said, oh, it's belief. And he goes, okay. And then a moment later, Rory corrects himself and he goes, no, it's knowing. It's knowing that you're going to win. And I think with every athlete I've worked with, it's this flappable knowing that they will achieve the goal, that they will achieve the thing they have in their mind. And you can't shake it. But the biggest challenge is for all of them, and you see this in Rory's story in particular, is that when you want it so bad, there's diminishing returns. And you've got to figure out how to unlearn that obsessiveness, right? That obsession to win, that competitive fire. You have to unlearn some of this stuff and figure out how to essentially let go and be in the moment, be present, trust yourself, trust the process, all the stuff that is so easy to say and incredibly difficult, if not the most difficult, to actually put into practice. And that's why there's only so many people that do the things that people like Rory do.
I mean, you saw it through his process from 2011. What was your particular favorite theory he had through the years on how he should prep for Augusta?
Oh, yeah. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, the hypnosis was pretty incredible. And that's when I was like, hold on, you see it in the interview. I'm like, wait, hypnosis. And he's like, no. It's not like that. Like, there's some more science to it. There's some science, and again, look, in his defense, he's like, I'll do anything to achieve my goal at this point. He was like, when he went into the Masters in 2015, he's got the Grand Slam in front of him. And it's like, oh, yeah, this will pan out. I mean, look at how incredibly successful I've been. Okay, comes up short again. Then again. And I think in 2018 with Patrick Reed was when he was really like, oh my God, the clock is actually ticking. Like, what is happening here? And you start doubting and he starts searching. And this is what makes Rory's story so incredible. It makes Rory himself as an athlete, but as a guy who's he's a deep thinker, and he's willing to go there, not just, with us in the film, but with himself, right? On a personal level, he's like, okay, what could I do differently? And everybody's got to kind of chart their own path. And I think, there was a point where we called that scene the kitchen sink, because Rory was just like, I'm going to throw everything at it. And ultimately, it's no surprise. He had to figure out how to just care less. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you got to take, it's like this in a quantum theory, right? It's like you got to take your eye off the thing and the thing moves in space. And so you can't be so laser focused. Otherwise, you seize up, and so there's this real challenging practice. And so, it's like just back to letting go. It's very Zen in many ways.
Something you said about the athletes and their belief through the years that I've known Rory and preceding this win, and any conversation I ever had with him, it always arrested my senses in conversation when the Masters came up. It was I never heard him say if I win the Masters. It always was when I win the Masters. And me as a human, part of me sometimes was going to be like, buddy, I don't know if that's going to happen. But he had that belief of when. In this round, I think you guys described it well, and I think a lot of people kind of pointed to this as Bryson was the target and the challenge early on. And I think you included a soundbite of somebody saying, then he had to beat himself to a certain extent. With all these huge moments, and it all huge moments in the sense magical and tragic within one round of golf, how did you go about choosing which ones you wanted to amplify? Because you could show everything,
Yeah, I mean that was a ongoing conversation internally with our edit team, and we went all in. Are we seeing every single hole? And then we went, oh no, we're going to pull out most of them and make it more about his journey. And then it was like, oh no, now we're coming back. And so we sort of landed in the middle. And look, it was this ongoing conversation with Rory, with his team. They all have different holes that meant different things. There were some that had a level of nuance where I was like, man, that is so in the weeds, dude. I don't even know if I understand what you're talking about right now. So look, I think there's a roller coaster ride that is obvious in the sense that he starts with the lead and he immediately loses that thing right out the gate. You're just like, okay, so we're showing hole one. He's tied after one, then he loses it after two, and you're like, oh my God, now what? You know what? We're going to show you what happened in 2011, right? This is just like that, right? So, for us, it was about finding, to the extent that we could, parallels between the 25 round and his past and where he's been before. And sometimes those mirrored each other and they rhymed, and sometimes they didn't. But it was okay from a storytelling standpoint. And so, once we come back to 25 and by hole 3 and 4, he's the Rory that we've seen before, who's just, sharp, clean. And next thing you know, he's got a bigger lead by the end of 4 than he did at the beginning of the day. And you're like, okay. Then we go back in time and we see like, this is the young prodigy who went on this meteoric rise after the incident in 2011. 3 out of the 4 majors in his pocket in 3 years. That's who this guy was. And now here we are in 25, and that's who this guy is, right? Let's see it. And so then things start to unfold. And so, it was a constant conversation about how to use the holes in different ways. Hole 7, hole 5 was sort of the first recovery shots. And so, how deep do we go there? Do we not go too deep? Because hole 7 is even a better example of it because he has the conversation with Harry and Harry's like, dude, just chip it out. Like, what are you thinking? And when we went to Augusta and we were filming there with him and we walked the course and he's like, yeah, so Dre, here's where I was. And I'm like, here? And he's like, yeah. And I looked up and I'm like, that's the gap you shot through? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, dude, if I'm in his position, all I see are like 4 huge trunks of trees, and I'm just like, dude, I'm literally just like moving that thing over the fairway. There's no version where you're taking that shot, and he's like, oh yeah, I totally have a shot, and Harry's like, all right, dude, let's see what you got. And so that became an example of like that squash buckling, exciting, approach that he has in his game, which makes watching Rory so fun. Because you're like, dude, he's not a robot out there. He's a painter, right? He's like an artist. He likes to move and he likes to do things that are unexpected and he takes risks. Jack would say he's taken too much risk over the years. And so it was interesting to get Jack's perspective, who's like, oh, he's got to temper that a little bit. So look, it took Rory 14 years to listen to Jack, and I think it ultimately paid off.
You mentioned Harry. He famously never gives any interviews. Did you consider asking if he'd do one for this?
Oh, come on, Andy. We tried so hard. And we were like, oh my God. We were like, we would not put it to bed. And his team, bless their hearts, everybody went to bat for us. As you see in the film, we had the honor and privilege of sitting down with Rory's mom and dad, who also don't do much press, haven't done much in years. And they were so kind and generous with their time and their insight. And they were just, I think they really make the film, if you ask me. So, once mom and dad came into the fold, that really unlocked a lot of the film. And yeah, we continued to try to put some pressure on Harry from different vantage points. Ultimately, he's like, guys, I'm not one for the limelight. So he respectfully declined, but his presence is there.
I was having a conversation the Sunday that Rory won with a journalist who was attempting to put together a story about Rory's caddy, and he was like, I can't pin him down. He won't give me an interview. He was, kind of like the strife of he never gives us anything, and I go, well, doesn't that make him a perfect caddy? Because he it's an interesting dynamic. Every journalist and media member and thus fans love the caddies that always have time to talk about what's going on. But in a way, if you're a player, maybe you want your caddy to just not say anything.
Yeah, just keep them guessing, keep them on their toes.
With regards to Jerry and Rosie, in some respects, they're kind of the stars of the film. And they obviously do not participate in media or interviews very often. In terms of your work, what did their contribution do you feel added the most to the film?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, what makes Rory's story so interesting and inspirational ultimately is Rory's not unlike a lot of other boys and girls who, have a dream, right? And as crazy and naive as that dream may seem, Rory was fortunate enough to have parents who saw in him this crazy obsession, but recognized that his obsession was actually was pretty good. And they decided, against, probably better judgment, that they were going to make some big sacrifices on his behalf and see how things would play out. And so, they came from modest means in Northern Ireland, and they decided to take on additional work and, work extra shifts at night to support Rory's dream. And, I think as an origin story, that's where things begin with him and his family. And family's everything to Rory. He was an only child. And so mom and dad were the center of his universe. It was just mom, dad, and golf. And so to have the opportunity to sit down with his mom and dad, look, everything that they shared with us was instrumental and key to sort of understanding in a deeper way, the kind of kid Rory was and just how this whole dream became a reality. And they were able to shed some light on stuff. I mean, it's no secret that Rory's, had challenges with putting, but to hear mom just share, the frustrations that Rory had as a young boy that, there's some stuff that didn't all make it in the film, but, she was like, look, he'd say, Mom, I'm going to go out and I'm going to putt. And she went, okay, Rory. And then he'd go out and he'd just pick up his chipper and he'd just start chipping. And that's all he'd do. He'd just chip. He wouldn't putt, So it's that kind of level of insight that was just like so great to hear and understand. And you understand, like, it just paints this really like interesting and complex picture of, how Rory came to be.
A lot of documentaries have people doing voiceovers, and you guys chose a more traditional method of letting the scenes and the stand-up talking heads tell the story. Why do you think that benefited this narrative?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, going back to kind of how we structured the film, this sort of like dual timeline between the 25 Sunday round and then sort of Rory's kind of backstory and experience, there was a lot of sort of threading that needed to be done. And along the way, we were fortunate, to be able to have this, great rapport with Rory and he wanted the film to be good, obviously. And so he was like, guys, I'm going to give you quite a bit of my time. Don't let me down. So the pressure was on to deliver, and Rory was very, very open with his time. And it's rare to have someone in sport really be able to kind of like tell their story. I mean, I'm thinking of, the Tiger doc, for example. I mean, Tiger doesn't even appear in the thing. There's others out there where you're hearing from the guys, but he really provided the backbone, right? So we just wanted to make this like, here's Rory, he's guiding us through this thing. And then along the way, these are the people in his world. And so to hear from mom and dad, to hear from, his putting coach and golf analyst, Brad Faxon, was really insightful. Ultimately, Rory enlisted the help of Dr. Bob Rotella. So, hearing from Dr. Bob about the work that they do and seeing how all that kind of plays into, Rory's experience in 25, I thought was really the way to go in terms of just bringing the story to light. Sometimes you got to just do the thing, simple can be good. And so that's what we're shooting for.
You mentioned a willingness, like, hey, I want this to be good, and being open. How much did you have to push Rory to be honest about his failures in the interviews, or was it an open book? And how does that compare with other subjects in your career?
Well, back to your earlier question, Andy, about having worked with a handful of various elite athletes, is there a common, kind of theme that you can draw between them, or personality traits? I will say, and maybe this is obvious to a lot of listeners, but they don't talk about the bad. They don't like to talk about the bad. They don't want to dwell on the bad. These guys thrive on positivity and short memories, right? And keeping things light. And so Rory's rare because he is willing to go there, but it's taken time. And when you do that at that level where he's still competing, you still have to be careful not to dwell on it or get too deep into it in some ways. And so I think for Rory and for other athletes, it's always this fine line between okay, yes, let me spend some time kind of thinking about this because we are trying to create and share a story, versus I got a tournament in 2 days. And last thing I want to do is be bringing up all this stuff that's going to maybe cloud me in some ways. And so I think there's this penchant to always keep things kind of light and positive. But look, to Rory's credit, he's been at this a long time. He's asked himself the hard questions. He's had some really, really challenging stretches in his career, lots of doubt. And so, yeah, to his credit, he was willing to go there at times and share with us, when he was starting to lose a little bit of love for the game. And I think it was right around that kind of 2017, 2018 time when, he was searching and needed to find a different way. And, there's no prescription, right? If there was, all these guys would be, successful every time. There's no prescription. And so you got to find that process that works for you and trust the outcome, but don't pay too much attention to it.
Yeah. I think the other crazy thing about golf is, a lot of sports is one, you win or you lose. And golf, it's, you have to beat, in the case of the Masters, 89, 90 other guys who are all attempting to win. It is a true winner takes all sport, which is the wild aspect of the margins that you're speaking of, how razor thin they are.
Yeah. I mean, incredibly razor thin. And it's also the one sport, again, you could dig into this in every sport, but to be leading with the lead and to be chasing that lead, I think take on a completely different complexion in golf because it's so singular. And so, I mean, you saw it yesterday, the LPGA here, where, Nelly Korda was 4 or 5 strokes back maybe at the beginning of the day. And next thing you know, she's got an opportunity to take the lead. And she's been charging all day, just in that position to just get after it. And then when she has that opportunity on the back nine, she tightens up and she can't quite do it. And she's oh, and then it ends up getting away from her and Kim ends up winning. And so, golf is so tricky that way. And so you see with Rory, I mean, after the front or the first nine, I'm using good Augusta speak there. Just noting that. That's for a shout out to my guy
hey,
Pat.
I heard it.
Okay, all right. So after the first nine, he's like, "Oh, Bryson was no longer in contention. I felt like I was I was in control." And then here comes another shark, and it's Justin Rose, and they end up trading the lead back and forth, 3-4 times practically before they get to the 18th hole, and it's just that like constant push and pull. And I think that part of the game is super fascinating and just like, man, talk about razor thin margins at every step. It's a lot. It's so hard to win.
Outside of that, curious as a golfer, you've made most of your career outside of golf. You work on this project that's, so golf. Was there anything else that like kind of crystallized to you about the sport, or Rory for that matter, that you wouldn't have had this perspective had you not worked on this project?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes back to, again, I don't want to take anything away, from, all the time and energy that needs to go into perfecting a swing, and Rory's got one of the prettiest swings in the game. But there really is, and we've talked about this a little bit at different points, there really is something to be said about trusting where you're at, and not over cooking it, overthinking it. The instruction manual, as Brad Faxon calls it, we all fall into that trap of the how-to, how are we going to do this thing? And there was this great moment. And again, this is just like, talk about the challenge of filmmaking and editing. I mean, some of the greatest moments don't make it into the movie because sometimes they get in the way. And there was this great moment with Jack in his interview. And I said to him, so, you the best to ever do it, the Masters like the back of your hand. You played Augusta a million times. Like, what's the secret to the greens? How do you read greens? And he steps back and he goes, it's just feel. That's it. And I'm like, oh, come on. There's more to it. You just don't want to share all the insight. And he's like, no, sometimes you got to just feel it. You got to trust where you've been, trust the work you've put in, and you got to kind of feel your way around the greens sometimes. And so he's like, you'll see guys, they spend too much time over the ball, common mistake, right? You're over it too long. The next thing you know, one too many thoughts. So to answer your question, I think in the simplest terms, Andy, it's like, what's the big takeaway I had? Which is just like, guys, be open, trust that process, and like let go. We have to learn to let go. And it's like, it's the one sport where you're like, oh, but you just gotta let go. And Rory obviously is a testament to that, especially on Sunday when things could have gone south fast, or even further south than they appeared to go on certain holes,
That's the essence of the sport. It's the hardest sport to let go. Yet it's the simplest advice. It's the best advice. Is to just let go, because like you think about like biomechanics just work better when you're relaxed, right? Your body moves more freely. All these things. I was talking to somebody. It was more about life than about golf, but I heard it and it stuck with me for golf. And I've only played one round since this, and I played just an unbelievable round. But this person said to me, Andy, you can't go back and litigate how you got here. And you can't also consume yourself about thinking about where you're going. You just have to be where you are. And I used this for golf, and it was transcendent for my mental approach. But it's, it's like these things, it's like a fleeting thing. That's the beauty of golf. It's inconquerable or unconquerable.
Unconquerable.
You can never.
Yeah. And you watch these guys. I mean, it's like, that's why Rory talks so much about like, it's like you got to string 4 good rounds together. You know how hard that is? And when you go back and look at his 25 Masters run, I mean, some say it wasn't 4, it was maybe 2 or 2.5, and he got away with one, and maybe it was 3, but to be that consistent at that level is the hardest thing you could possibly do. So for us, just the guys that are out here trying to have a good time with some friends, I'm just trying to beat my buddies. I'm just trying to win the little stack of dough. I'm just trying to hit the ball straight half the time. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, I'll go, oh, what did I do last time? Why didn't it work this time? It's like, no. Just get up there, try to get in the moment, do your routine, and just try to feel your way through this a little bit more and not think your way through this.
It's just like what Rotella said about in the piece. I thought that was an amazing, like, I've made a career, everybody says you can't do this, and win a tournament. And I've made a career telling people it's okay, that people do these mistakes and still win all the time. Yeah,
that was a really great retort. When we found that little moment, we've kind of, again, editing is alchemy, right? And I think it's like filmmaking's funny. There's a lot of parallels to golf. It's like, in filmmaking, I like to think about 3 movies are being made. It's the one you plan and write, and the one you shoot, and then there's the one you edit. And all 3, they're all related. They're all cousins of each other, but they're all different. And the editing process itself is where these things all come together. And when we had that great biting line from one of the BBC commentators, it was just like, oh my God, how could Rory McIlroy end up in the bunker on his approach shot on the 18th? Like, you can't win like that. Not if you're working with Dr. Bob. The sky's the limit.
It's one day we'll have to have you come on and do a whole filmmaking golf comp podcast. But Dre, congratulations on your work. I'm sure you're excited for the world to see it, and hopefully we'll see you do a couple more projects in golf before you end your career.
Man, spread the word, Andy. I'm like, man, I got the bug. I'm all in. It was great. Rory's incredible to work with. His team was fantastic. So had a great time. So excited for the film to come out. And we'll see you guys around.
A word of caution: don't make golf your full-time thing, because then what you learn is golf goes away. Your personal golf goes away. So.
Totally. Right. You're like, I don't have time to do this. That's the thing. It's like everybody thinks golf is an expensive sport. By all means, it is not cheap, but it's expensive in time, right? Yeah. It's like you need that more than anything else.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Dre.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right, before we get to PJ Clark and our 10 Masters favorites, let's talk about our friends over at Perfect Practice Putting Mat. You know what Rory needed when he was a kid? Dre's talking about how his mom mentions he never liked putting, never liked practicing putting. A Perfect Practice Putting Mat would have been perfect for him for his house. I've got one that's set up. It really helps me with putting. I don't go practice putting at putting greens anymore because, frankly, I have a 5-year-old and I don't have a lot of time. But like the things that I like to do when I go practice putting is I like to just sit and hit 4-footers that are dead straight, because I feel like, hey, if I make all of these putts, then I'm not going to have bad putting days. Like if I just make all the putts that I want to make, that I need to make, which is 4 feet in it, it's great for that. I used to always love to putt with a chalk line when I practice putting. It has basically a virtual chalk line. Makes sure you're getting your ball started on the right line. Makes sure, helps you visualize your stroke. I prefer to get my stroke going a little inside. So like I always like the chalk line, seeing my putter kind of come inside. And from there, I felt like I could really release the putter. So anyways, the Perfect Practice Putting Mat is a great way to practice. One of the reasons you can just sit there and hammer 4-footer after 4-footer is they've got the auto ball return. It is a great product. I really like it. If you're interested in the Perfect Practice Putting Mat, go to perfectpractice.com. Use the promo code FRIEDEGG and you get 20% off. Thanks to our friends at Perfect Practice for being a longtime supporter of this podcast. That's perfectpractice.com. Use the promo code FRIEDEGG for 20% off. All right, let's get to PJ and let's talk about our 10 Masters favorites. PJ, welcome on. It's been a minute since you've been on the pod.
Hello, I'm happy to be here. Well, I'm always here, but kind of just floating above everything. But I'm happy to be here vocally.
You're gonna be credentialed for your first Masters.
It's very grateful, very excited for the opportunity, very daunted by the task ahead of me, but I can't wait.
Do you have one thing you're most excited about? Other than the snack stand.
I was going to say the peach ice cream sandwich has been calling my name since last year. So I think that's maybe poorly, but that's where my head went first when you asked that question.
That's great. That's great. Anything from like the actual golf that you're excited about?
Yeah, I think as you said before, everybody except for Scotty and Rory is kind of in rounding into form, or at least has been in form at some point this year. So it for as wide open as the top end of this field feels, I think it'll be interesting seeing Scotty now with a second kid, some added perspective maybe a little bit. But it seems like it's going to be a good Masters. So the golf should be good at the very least.
This was so hard.
It was.
Figuring out the 10. I found myself wanting to spill into like 15. You know, I could get with some sleepers to 20. You know, if I extended, you know, to Corey Connors, he could maybe get me to like 30.
Well, Corey Connors is open for interpretation, but I think you can make a legit argument for a list of 10 guys. You can make a legit argument for probably, I had 17 on my initial, I got to cut 7 guys off of this list. I think you can make a legit argument for 15, 17-ish guys to be in a top 10.
All right, let's go 10 through 1, or do you want to go 1 through 10?
Well, whatever, whichever way you want.
I mean, I think everybody knows who's going to be 1, so why don't we just start there?
Okay.
This doesn't have to be brief. For me, he's in a slump, per se. Don't tell him he's in a slump,
No.
as we learned a couple weeks ago. He's been a little grumpier than usual, but he's still, you know, operating. I'm going to take the body of work over the last 3 years, operating at a completely different plane than everybody else. Scotty Scheffler, 2-time Masters winner. Course is tailor-made for him. There are some like alarming things. His iron play just hasn't been very good this year. Obviously, you know, Augusta National is a second shot golf course. It is super dependent on hitting precise second shots. That being said, if you're not hitting precise shots, you know what you want? You want Scotty Scheffler's short game, because it allows you, and we've seen this time after time this year where he's like clearly visibly off, and then you tally up the scores and it's like, oh, he shot 69 today. Scotty's my number 1. Is he your number 1?
Yeah, he's number 1 until he's not, in terms of the body of work, as you said, and the course history at Augusta. I am curious the current trends of Thursdays not being his best day. This might be the ultimate litmus test of how far back is too far back on Thursday. Where is the line if he shows up and does not have his best stuff on Thursday? He tends to get better throughout the tournaments that we've seen this year. But I'm sure somebody will have a power rankings list within the next couple of weeks without Scotty at the top, but that's a bridge too far for me.
Yeah, I just couldn't get there. Who did you have going number 2?
I have Bryson DeChambeau number 2 right now. I think the live results are inarguable at this point. He has won back-to-back events on live, took down John Rahm in a playoff most recently, has the course history at Augusta. Obviously, the struggles with his iron game, distance control have shown in Sunday, especially last year in the final pair with Rory. I think his putting kind of got away from him. He's such a good putter with speed control, and on Sunday, watching back as watching the documentary from earlier and watching back the final round, his putting just completely got away from him on Sunday last year, and I am interested to see how he kind of responds after taking, Rory used the Mike Tyson quote in the documentary of everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Bryson got punched in the mouth pretty hard last year on Sunday at the Masters. So I'm excited to see how he comes back.
It's the second year that he struggled with distance control. He cited that in his press conference last year, leading into the Masters. Is he's like, I really struggled with the speed of the greens and getting my pacing right, and I think that's like a bugaboo of his at Augusta. But I mean, he's had short of Rory, his career at the Masters has been fascinating. He's had like the whole run of it, and kind of out of nowhere the last 2 years, he has been contending after years of struggles, where, a fun bet every year was him versus Larry Mize, to now where he's number 2 on your board. He's number 3 on my board. We'll just dispense the rest of it here. This is the best he's played coming into the Masters in recent memory. Really, since he went to live, it's the best he's played. He hasn't been like a constant presence on the leaderboard. You go back to Adelaide, he played in the final group. He played poorly in the final group, but he was in the final group where Anthony Kim won. And then he's won the last two. The last 2 events he's teed it up in coming into it. A lot of confidence at a golf course that I think he's like really figured out how to play tee to green, where to pick his spots, understands like you can't just overpower the golf course, but you can work your way around it and get the success that you're looking for. You don't, so I think Bryson for me is one of the big stories. I put Rory number 2. I guess, he showed me a lot. I think like, he contended, obviously, at Genesis without like his ace stuff. I think Bay Hill, if he doesn't get hurt there, he is rounding into. I think he probably would have been the favorite going into the weekend at that tournament. That's where I would have probably put him. I think that Rory, despite the back issue that lingered through the Players, we won't see him before the Masters. He's not going to play San Antonio, so. This will be, he'll come in a little bit under the radar, but it's going to be like, I'm fascinated by it. Like it's a wild card putting him at number 2, but I'm fascinated about the dynamic of like, you've gone, the last almost 20 years of your life. Like this place has become, really since 2011, like this haunted house for you. And you finally get it done in super dramatic fashion. Everything's flipped now. It's gone from a place he probably didn't want to spend a lot of time at, and it was always questioning how he should arrive, to a place that it's probably a pretty comfortable place now.
Yeah, I'd feel pretty good.
And I think that is, the question to me is like, is it just going to be too much to repeat with, the Champions Dinner and everything? But I mean, he's going to be on the first tee on Thursday feeling a relief that he's never really had there.
Yeah, I think I have him 3rd, so we could just keep going down the list right now. We're matched up in the top 3, albeit in a slightly different order here. I think grinding out the weekend at the Players, you can tell it wasn't all there, but some of the shots he hit, especially on Sunday, like his drive on 12, for example, like the speed was still there. The ability to get the ball as far as possible was still there, no matter how much the back maybe hurt or didn't. It wasn't all clicking, but I think with a couple weeks of rest off, got to be riding high. I think the only thing that would truly surprise me, Rory, at the 2026 Masters is if he won again. If he's contending and a top 10 finish, not surprised at all. If it's just too much and he misses the cut or is kind of just loitering on the weekend out there early, not surprised at all. I would only be surprised in the range of outcomes if somehow this goes back to back.
Listen, I think he's like, if anything, understands because of last year that he doesn't have to be perfect,
No.
and that if he just lets the golf course come to him and moments come to him, he's got enough horsepower to win there. I mean, it's a crazy, with last year and all the swings and the double bogeys and the perseverance to win that event. Basically won it like 3 times on Sunday. It's crazy. After, the resilience to win after what happened on Thursday.
Yeah.
Isn't talked about as much as like he is cruising on Thursday and then he chips it into the water on 15 and it just falls apart. And shoots even par. I just think that last year is going to pay off dividends. But this is the thing we often do. We always think the floodgates are going to open after a win. I remember after Sergio won, getting on air and being like, "This is the floodgates moment. It's going to happen now. He's going to win 3 more majors because he finally was freed up." So it's an amazing storyline going into this year's Masters. It's also very nice that we don't have to frame everything through.
No.
Rory. Is Rory going to finally get it done this year?
No. It's got to be as much of a relief for him. It's probably a relief for everybody else because it's not the number one topic of conversation.
Instead of that, we are going to have it seems likely that we're going to have is Tiger going to make the cut? Occupy the first 5 days of Masters coverage.
So Tiger is not on your top 10 list, is what you're telling me right now?
Didn't make my board,
okay.
Peach.
Okay.
Didn't make my board. Models didn't like the endurance. That's
Okay.
where they fell short.
Understandable.
Who's 4 for you?
I have Cameron Young. This is the number
Your
3
guy.
player in the world. Number 3 player in the world, Cameron Young. I only thought we'd be here in my dreams, but unironically, I think when you're making a list of the big game players in today's golf, I know this is something that Joseph harps on a lot. Cameron Young has to be near the top of that list. This is a guy that routinely posts top 10, top 5 finishes in a very limited major run, had so much success early, almost won that Open at St. Andrews, was in it until literally the final putt, was trying to make a 1 on the 18th hole at St. Andrews because that's what he knew he needed to win a major championship. But now is playing the best golf of his career, is a top flight putter in a total reverse of every fate that has gotten him to this point. You want to talk about Rory's confidence? I would find it pretty hard to believe that Cameron Young's confidence is not sky high right now either.
2 top 10s in 4 appearances, 2 missed cuts, hasn't contended deeply. Those would be my concerns. But I think this is a mark, as you've hit on. He's a different player than he was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. The putter being a weapon is transformational. So I will go with number 4, a guy that has appeared in 2 Masters and has had a chance to win 2 Masters deep on Sunday. Ludwig Aubert. He will be number 4 on mine. I think he's going to be a very popular bet. He had been a little bit in the wilderness in the last few months for his standards, I would say. But he is coming on strong, played very well, obviously, at the Players, played well at Bay Hill, and something has clicked, and now he's heading back to a happy hunting ground where, last year he could have won. Or at least very much been in the playoff.
He tried. That's the T8 last year is not indicative of what actually happened there on Sunday because he tried. He went for broke, pushed all the chips in, and fell to 8th.
The way you pick off one of these is if you get in the mix a lot.
Yeah.
And he's been in the mix 2 for 2. I expect him to be in the mix. He's got the type of game that just makes, the way he drives the ball, if he's clicking, just makes Augusta. It's a sneaky, everything's important at Augusta, but it is a sneaky driving test. Like if you can get the ball to the right spots with a lot of power, it's like anywhere this is the case, but it makes the approach shot so much easier. So, Ludwig is my number 4. Who's 5 for you?
This is where I put John Rahm. This was kind of my biggest question on where
I've got
to
him
slot
here
him
too.
in. Feels like he has to be in the top 10 just by given all of the data is off the charts within the last 3 months. He's playing like arguably the best player in the world in these live fields for whatever value you want to place on that, but obviously has done it before at Augusta, knows his way around. I don't know how necessarily confident I am in Jon Rahm showing up and being that top flight player. He popped at the PGA, was kind of the first, break back into the premier flight of a game in a major championship. And then everybody was all in on the Open last year, and he kind of fell right back flat on his face. The Jon Rahm hype is building, and I think within the next 10 days, we're going to reach a crescendo where he becomes a very, very popular pick, and deservedly so. 5 could be way too high, or 5 could be 5 spots too low. But I feel like right in the middle of the top 10 is where I slotted him.
All right, I have him the same spot. I think him getting a win was actually important.
Yes.
Getting the monkey off the back. It had been a long time since he had won. I think the live going to 72 holes has helped him.
Yes.
It's just part of like the approach to golf, a 54-hole approach. Like you're thinking slightly differently during a stroke play tournament than a 72-hole stroke play tournament. Listen, I think he's kind of, he's a lot of people are going to talk about him, but in the vein of this, I think he's kind of undervalued at 5 in a way. 6, I've got Cameron Young, who we already talked about at length. Who's your 6?
I have Xander at 6. I feel like it's the sneakiest possible 2-time major champion entering the Masters that was out in the wilderness. Last year was basically a lost year, starting off with the injury. Wins the Bay Current, starts off slow this year, but has slowly but surely rounded back into peak form and is just kind of loitering for a guy, again, with an incredible major championship record that could not figure out how to get off the schneid. Wins twice in 2024. I think Xander is live. I think he's running, and I think this is the guy that should be receiving all of maybe the Jon Rahm hype that is slowly coming to form here.
The iron play has been exceptional. And that is the big thing here. I think like we did a pod a few weeks ago. It was like we need to see something from Xander, and he has shown in the last couple of weeks that he is back at the top level of golf, and we're only a calendar year removed from him winning 2 majors in a year. So I have him 10. I feel like it's low. It's low for him.
I mean, who knows? But the fact that he is still in the bottom half of both of our top 10s, even with me having him at 6, I feel like a fool already, honestly.
Up next, I've got Justin Rose at 7.
Okay.
This is where, like, when I started to look at the list, I'm like, this is insane. The guy, has had an awesome year. He sits at 7th in the world. He has one of the best track records of any player, winners or losers or non-winners at Augusta National ever. He won the Farmers Insurance at Torrey. He's played well at the Players. This guy clearly gets up. He's been just such a factor at major championships, and particularly the Masters. Like, I'd be shocked if he's not in the top 12 of this tournament at the end of the day. So I got him at 7. Like, I think this guy is a legitimate threat to win, and that's why I have him above Xander. Like, I believe in Justin Rose at the Masters, like, in insane amount, because he's been there so often.
It's hard to not. I have him at 10, and I only have him at 10 because after Torrey, he missed a couple cuts in a row. I feel like Justin Rose is like, he gets up for the big events now. It's like, it's kind of all or nothing, where on a week-to-week basis, Justin Rose is not going to flip the switch. But if it's time to really get in contention, to really push the pedal to the floor, Justin Rose is still at 45 as good as anybody. But on the
he just won the
basis,
TGL playoffs. Talk about big moment he got up for.
He did get up for that. That certainly is true. He's got a new hat that I'm excited to see if anybody debuts that on the grounds at Augusta.
Who's your 7?
This is where I had Ludwig. You have to have him in the top 10. It's a question of how high. The innocence, your favorite Padraig Harrington quote, the innocence is now gone, I would say, maybe after the players. And the scar tissue is building a little bit, but there is no comfier place.
Sneaky scar tissue, actually, is like, if you want to short Ludwig, he has some scar tissue.
Yeah, water is becoming a threat for him between Augusta and Sawgrass. So you have to have him in the top 10. It's a very comfy place, as you said, for him. He should feel in good spirits and ready to bounce back. But I am a little bit wary of the scar tissue beginning to build.
All right, I've got number 8. I don't think he's going to be on your board. And I think he just should not be underestimated at Augusta National. I've got Hideki Matsuyama.
He is not on my board.
I think this is like the least talked about great player who's playing really, really good golf in the lead up. Like, this year started and I was like, whoa, Hideki, he looks good. He's healthy. His finishes, he won the Hero, which is like, whatever, take whatever you want. But then he goes T13, T11, second, 8th to start the year. Now, he's made the last 3 cuts. They've been inconsequential results. But I'll tell you what, he is a great ball striker, tee to green. And I don't, people don't watch TGL normally, but an anecdote you could take away, file away into your brains forever about Hideki Matsuyama is Rory McIlroy talking to Tiger Woods about how he thinks Hideki Matsuyama has the best pitching motion there is. Like, and he's always been criminally under talked about as the best short games in the world, and at a place where sometimes you just have to dump a ball off to the side. We were just talking about with Scotty. If you have to dump yourself out, you have to save tough pars because you get out of position. The number one skill you want to have is a deft touch, and that's why Hideki Matsuyama and the next guy on my list are always threats at Augusta National. They are short game wizards.
Well, we can just go right to the next guy on your list, because my number 8, you want to talk about the best short game in the world. Patrick Reed is here, and I think it's just incredible to think back that Patrick Reed came in 3rd at last year's Masters and was the first man out of the playoff. And yeah, it took a little bit of not a lucky journey, but some breaks had to go the right way for that to even happen on Sunday last year in the first place. But you have to respect everything that Patrick Reed is doing to already earn his way back via the DP World Tour top 10 to the PGA Tour next year. Has 2 wins already this year. Hasn't played in a month, which you could convince me that's a good thing. You could convince me that's a bad thing. Should he be at DLF this week? Is it better to be in India versus not playing for a month? I don't know, but I'm never ruling Patrick Reed out, especially now that he's playing well entering the Masters this year.
One of the best stories of the year from like just a pure golf, whatever you feel about Patrick Reed, it's like, here's the gauntlet laid down. This is, you want to come back to the PGA Tour, go earn it on the DP World Tour and earn it. And he earned it in basically 3 weeks. And I mean, he's a guy, this is, there are just people that are built for Augusta National. He doesn't drive the ball particularly well. His iron play is hot or cold. But when you can get up and down out of a telephone booth, that is an incredible skill to have there. And if he gets cooking, there's certain people that just go win golf tournaments, and he is one of those people. So I have him 9 on my list. Who's your number 9?
I have the leader on the PGA Tour in strokes gained approach at number 9. fellow returnee to the PGA Tour alongside Patrick Reed. Brooks Koepka is, I think there's some added motivation now that Rory has tied him in major championships. I think the game is rounding into form through the Florida swing. Obviously, this is a big week in Houston as a design consultant, a place at Memorial Park he knows very well. But you mentioned the other day on Shotgun Start that maybe his driving advantage is not as big as it used to be. Maybe there is no driving advantage at all anymore because everybody has gotten so much better and so much longer, and he's aging out. But the iron play has been just magnificent. The putter has left a lot to be desired. We're putting away the Scotty Cameron, and now the Spider is in the bag alongside seemingly everybody else in the world. But can't rule him out. It's hard to given the recent major championship form since his win at the PGA in 2023, but especially now that he's playing on a week-to-week basis and the numbers are there and the iron play is there, like you said, it's a second shot golf course. It's not like he's never contended at a Masters before, so he's got to make the top 10 for me.
My number 10 is Xander, who we've already talked about. And rounding out the last spot, what's your last spot?
Justin Rose. That's
right.
It's you have to put him on the list. Hat tip to Justin Rose. Sorry to Matt Fitzpatrick and Tommy Fleetwood, but that's it.
All right, Peach. Thanks for jumping in. As always, thank you for producing the show. Hey, do you have a pick to click in the pro shop? We've got our major. We're ready for major season. I don't know if it's iconic, but our highly sought after Mackenzie Bunker merchandise is up in the pro shop at proshop.thefriedegg.com. You can get it on the Andy hoodie. You can get it on the Dewey pocket tee. I'm going to be getting one of those for sure. There's hats. There's a hat that I actually ordered the other day, paid good money for it. Much more, proshop.thefriedegg.com. What's your pick to click?
I like the new line of cool Larson polos from B. Dratty. Some good colors in there. All
right. Check it out, proshop.thefriedegg.com. We'll be back next week. We've got a good one. The one that tickled your heart as our preeminent Champions Tour analyst. The great Bernard Langer joins next week to talk about his illustrious career and told some good stories. So that was all we wanted, and we'll be excited for next week's episode.